Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the Heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Right now, alongside your host, James Brown, that being me, is Trevent Hayes, the Caverna Colonels football coach, here to talk to us today about the Caverna Colonels. You know, we've covering the gambit of the schools that we really cover on 104 The Score, and so we had John Myers in a couple of weeks ago, Jeff Garman in last week. That's Barron County in Glasgow. And then Trevent was unable to make it last week. Originally you were going to be on, but so you were here this week to tell us about the Colonels. And pre-game, so to speak, for the show, you and I were discussing some of these preseason rankings that we've seen.
Yes.
And so I'm sure you have an opinion, both as a coach and as a fan of Caverna. But because I've been kind of amazed because in a couple of different rankings we've seen Russellville placed ahead of Caverna, and you guys beat them last year. It was a wild game. I mean, you guys, I think, led the whole game except for maybe like in a little bit in the first half.
First quarter, yeah.
First quarter. Mm-hmm. But, you know, in the end, I mean, you guys were up by 20 at different times. Yeah, it got a little crazy toward the finish line there. But you basically had a sophomore class leading your team.
Right.
And some of their better players were older players. Now, I know they had some good younger players as well. So I've been a little bit surprised by that preseason ranking. And then my question for you is, not you necessarily what you thought about it, but have your players seen this, and has that provided a little motivation for them?
It has. They, of course, when Cat's Paws came out, they all were anxious to see where they was going to have us ranked. And once they saw that they had us predicted to win the district, like a couple of days later, they saw on Max Preps that Max Preps had us ranked number 20 and Russellville 18, and they couldn't quite understand, you know, how can we win the district? And in order to win the district, usually the winner of this game is going to win the district. And they just, you know, they kind of felt like they didn't think that, you know, the sports writers didn't think we were going to beat anybody but the teams in the district.
Right.
So they've kind of used it as a little motivation.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, I mean, you basically had a team of sophomores, and, I mean, you lost 2 or 3, I think, players that were probably critical to you guys, but, I mean, you're looking at the guys coming back and some people who have been added probably who have decided to come out and play, because that was one of the things last year was getting your numbers up. And so, you know, how has that looked for you this year?
It's, you know, we at one time we had 29 kids out. Then, of course, you know, you always have some to fall off by the wayside. But we've really went hard with the 23 that's been there. At 24, Tavion Alexander actually had a knee injury. He had surgery last Friday, so he's out for the season. But I talked to some kids on Thursday, and you know, we're supposedly going to have 3 more kids come to practice today. You know, I know a lot of coaches tell me, well, I wouldn't let it happen, but you also have more than 56 boys to choose from in the school, you know. So we're not fortunate to have numbers, so, you know, I have to be a little lenient with that. But, you know, if the 3 that said they were going to play comes out, it's only going to add. But if they don't, I still think we're going to be 7-3 team.
Yeah. Well, and you guys started school, on Thursday? Is that
yes.
right? So, I mean, traditionally, that's the way high school football would work a lot. You might get some people who would show up after school started or when school started.
Like it when I played.
Yeah, because, I mean, they had things to do during the summer. Work on the farm, have a job, whatever like that.
Yep.
Transportation, they couldn't get to practice or whatever. So, I mean, you know, the fact that you even get as many as you do out there in those before-school workouts is pretty impressive anyway.
It is.
So, you know, I'm with you on the if 3 want to come and play, you know, I'm guessing they're going to have to do their time and then
if
see
12 want to come. Yeah, come on. You know, they just have a number of practices that they have to, you know, get in, and then they've got to have so many days before they can put equipment on. And but we'll go through that, even if I have to pick up some Saturday practices, some 2-a-day Saturday practices, get those practices in.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the players you had returning. Obviously, you have the twins, Tyson and Kenyon. Russell Williams, who played quarterback some last year, played wide receiver some last year. And you're kind of making some changes there, too, because you have Cortavian Maxey, who young guy, athletic kid, but probably was just kind of learning how to play football last year, because I don't know if he played with them in the middle school.
He's played with them the whole time.
Okay.
probably the best route runner that we have. Cortavion's really never liked contact. But, I talked to him this summer and told him, hey, and this is before we knew who was going to play and who wasn't going to play. I just felt like if I could transition him to quarterback, he's 6'4". He can see over the line. He has a great arm. Just told him, hey, if you could learn the quarterback position, it's only going to make us better. And he's been going to get some training. Chris Todd up at Elizabethtown has been working with him for a couple of months now. And, he's starting to really get comfortable at quarterback. He's very athletic. He's just as athletic as the twins and Russell. And then last Saturday we scrimmaged Red Boiling Springs, and, it didn't start off well, but after the first little series, I think he ended up with maybe 90 yards rushing and a couple of touchdown passes, and his confidence got a little better, and he's feeling a little bit better about playing the position.
Yeah. Well, and Tyson, of course, he led the 1A in rushing last year. Just had a couple of just incredible. And scoring,
Yeah.
That's right. So, he's no mystery whatsoever.
Right.
But are you also then trying to look at using him in different ways now that you got Cortavian
Actually, we're gonna be able to have him and Kenyon both at the wings together.
Okay.
And Kenyon has more than put in his work over the summer. So teams are not going to be able to tell. In the past, you could tell the difference by the way they play, but now you can't tell a difference because Kenyon runs it just as hard as Tyson does.
Yeah, so they're going to have to check the numbers, huh?
They're going to have to look at the numbers, right.
Well, so then how does that leave you with wide receiver? Who are you looking at in those
Russell
areas?
Williams. We're going to run a lot of sets without a tight end. So Russell's 6'5", so you're not going to have very many corners over 5'10".
Yeah.
So I really like that matchup. But the surprise that we have is Caleb Burris. He's a junior. Caleb is probably the most elusive kid on the team. Just not a lot of experience, but he's worked hard over the summer. Had a great 7-on-7, a great scrimmage. And we're going to go to him a lot. Even with him being small, it's going to be hard, to get him the ball downfield.
Yeah.
But we've created some things to get him the ball and in the open field and let him have one-on-ones, and I like that matchup as well. I don't think there's too many people that can, tackle him in open space.
Yeah. Now, last year, one of the things you were having to do was basically piece together an offensive line because, that was one of the areas you didn't have a lot of players. You didn't have a lot of experience with those players, but that was one of the places you were hoping to find some people who were interested in coming and playing.
Right.
How's that worked out?
Well, we got Christmas early or late.
Yeah.
We had a kid move in, Cortavion Fryer, just a big, strong, athletic kid. He's fast.
Yeah.
He's definitely a college defensive lineman, but on the offensive side of the ball, he's helping us a lot. And last year we had to play Keaton Williams on the line, who was our fullback.
Yeah.
He's going to play fullback and play that tight end spot when we have a tight end. And he was not healthy all year last year. So that's the reason we transitioned him to the line, kind of keep him in a small space. But Drew Merle's a senior. Drew's put in a lot of work. Our line, I'm actually more impressed with our line than I am with any group on the team.
Yeah.
They've really, really worked hard this summer. They've worked hard in the weight room. They condition. Last year if we ran 10 gassers, Drew was ready to beat me up after the third one. But now, now he's not last anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it's the energy that Big Tay has brought with him. They want to get to his level.
Yeah. And then I guess some of those guys are going to transition to the defensive line as well. I guess Fryer definitely will because he's a pretty tough dude to block.
He is. He's going to play. He's actually going to play an end for us.
Okay.
He and Kenyon are going to play ends. Zandon Korn, who had a great season last year, just doesn't get talked about a lot because he's a lineman.
Yeah.
Zandon Korn, and then we've got Z. Zedrick Drawhorn, we call him Z. We're going to move him and Jacob Richardson to the linebacker spots, which allows them to stand up. And both of those guys are really aggressive. And who else? Not only on the line, but we had another kid move in from Bowling Green. His name's Jamarion Moore. Very athletic kid. He's about 6 foot. He's pretty quick, and he's going to play that safety and corner for us. So I'm really looking forward to our defense too. I think we're going to have one of the fastest fronts, regardless of class in the area.
Well, and back to your talking about your district. I mean, when you look at your district, Fulton County has struggled in recent years. Ballard Memorial struggled in recent years. So it really is that kind of Russellville-Caverna game again, more than likely,
Right.
As long as nothing happens. So when you look at your district, I mean, what do you tell your players before that starts?
I'm just honestly, I tell the kids, I don't care if we're 0-6 when we go into the district. I really do care. But I just want them to know that we want to secure those district games.
Yeah.
But Russellville is Russellville. They're a traditional program. They have a really young coaching staff. They like to jump up and down, and they a lot younger than I am. Their energy's a lot different than ours.
Yeah.
But our kids, they've really found that disrespectful. And I know there's been a couple of interviews to where we're just talked over, as if we're not even in the district, and I just don't understand how they could view us like that. And we won the district last year, and we really didn't lose anybody.
Yeah.
So, I think the kids are really looking forward to repeating as district champs. They know that it's in our sights, and
Would that be the first time Caverna's ever done that? If it
ever,
does it?
yeah, because we've only won it twice.
Right.
We've only won it twice.
Back-to-back years, huh?
Yeah, won it back-to-back years.
Yeah. Well, and so, I mean, you guys start off this Friday with Muhlenberg County. It's a game up there in Muhlenberg County. Last year, I think you had
Don't say it.
You had 2 or 3 players not playing last year.
Okay, yeah. Tyson and Cortavion.
Yeah, I don't know what you thought I was about to say.
Oh, well, I know.
Nonetheless.
You watched, Ray Finkel laces out. Yeah, all I've thought about for the last 2 weeks is onside kicks. They onside kicked us to death. We couldn't get on an onside kick. 22-6 was the score.
Yeah.
They scored 22 really early. And once we got settled in, we pretty much cut their offense in half.
Yeah.
But they just, those onside kicks were terrible.
I take it you guys have worked on that a little bit this year.
Yes, we have. And I will be taking over the special teams.
All right.
That's just something, and it's all mental. And to one of the kids' defense, we had a kid that we stuck out there. It was his first year playing football.
Yeah.
And we went over it in practice, but he was nervous, and it happens. But we're a lot older team that I know it's just been a year, but I feel like we have aged 2 or 3 years between last year and this year.
Yeah. Well, and so, I mean, that's where you start off the season. And Muhlenberg County, not a traditional powerhouse, but, I mean, they kind of run an offense sometimes that can cause people
They
problems.
run that veer.
Yeah.
And, it's just, at the end of the day, it's 5A and single A.
Yeah,
it's
right.
a 5A school playing one of the smallest, I'd say, 6 schools in the state of Kentucky. We're not very big. So if we can come out Friday and beat them, I think that'll make a statement to let people know that, hey, last year wasn't a fluke.
Right.
I think they may be okay.
Well, and then you really kind of upgraded your schedule because that second week you play Adair County at Marion County in a bowl game over there. Of course, that team coached by Stone Rock now. He's always a good Stonebreaker, my bad.
Steve and I played together in college.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I told him don't wear a sweater to the game, Steve.
Okay. Yeah, Stonebreaker. I don't know why I call him Stone Rock. Anyway.
We used to call him Stone Hands.
Did you?
Yes.
Okay. Well, his son does not have stone hands.
He doesn't.
And Easton Jesse, who used to be Glasgow's quarterback, is over there now throwing the football to him. So that's going to be a real good test, I think, for you guys, don't you think?
I do. They will challenge us defensively. Mm-hmm. And we'll challenge them defensively. I don't think that they have the personnel to stop us from scoring. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't think scoring is going to be an issue for us this year. We hired a new coach, Brian Graves. He's from Westmoreland, Tennessee, coached at Westmoreland in Lafayette. Mm-hmm. And then he coached at Red Bowling Springs for a couple of years in North Carolina. I think he's been coaching for 31 years. And he's ran the wing tee the whole time. Mm-hmm. But he's came in, and in the last 2 months, he's just showed me so much that you can do out of the wing tee to kind of just catch people off balance. And I'm really looking forward to running this new style of wing tee.
Gotcha. So there you have that. Then you have Eminence, who was really good last year. That was ended up losing that game, but it was a barn burner.
We was beating them 18-0.
Yeah.
Jalen Crane gets hurt, and
Yeah.
they start throwing over the top. We kept our receipts from last year. We've got all of our receipts.
And then Edmonson County, who had a running back that you guys had a problem with last year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he graduated, but that was probably one of those games that shocked you as it went along from the
It
some of
did,
the
because
sideline.
it's like he had oil all over his body. We couldn't tackle him.
I know.
We'd hit him in the backfield, and he'd just get away.
Yeah, that was the craziest game, to be honest. And then, Shawnee, and then, you'll play your rivals, Hart County.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, they're still going to be pretty good this year.
They are, but like I told, Chat last year, as a coach, you never want to tell your kids that you can't compete.
Mm-hmm.
And I never told them that we couldn't compete, but I knew that we would struggle competing with them. They had 16 seniors, and those kids that played together since they were in the third grade. It's hard to beat a unit like that. But I told him, next year will be different, and I feel like it will be different this year.
Yeah. And then you get in your district games, you'll play that Fulton County game before fall break,
Mm-hmm.
and then you'll have that Friday off and come back with Russellville and then the Ballard Memorial, where you have to travel all the way to the Mississippi River in order to play that game.
We do. We confirmed our charter bus last week. So, yeah, I went ahead and got that lined out. I mean, that's just it's a terrible ride. It's a terrible drive. And, although they're not traditionally good, just like Fulton County, we go to Fulton County last year, and I think we ended up winning. We scored 70-some points. But, the first 2 or 3 series, we looked terrible. And, they're kids.
Yeah.
You've been on a bus for 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
We stopped at 8, and, then it was fall break, and half the team was going to Gulf Shores, and everything else was on their mind. So we had to call a quick timeout and have a come to Jesus meeting and let them know that we had to do some other things before, they could go on their vacation. But, I think that we'll roll through pretty good in the district. I know Russellville's going to be competitive, but again, and we play them at home.
Mm-hmm.
And last year we averaged about 300 people at the games, which to Glasgow and Barron, that's not a lot, but for us that's a whole lot. In the past you'd have 25 people in the bleachers, but it means a lot when you're winning because people start to support you.
Yeah. And then you'll close out with Monroe County at home this year.
Mm-hmm.
They also are a team that likes to run an offense, a little tricky. And John Pettit always has some play that's going to be. You just look up there and go, where did he pull that one from?
He does. And last year, was a great game.
Yeah.
We had a couple of touchdowns caught back.
Yeah.
We had a missed coverage on a punt. The Williams kid ran it back for a touchdown. But we kept that receipt too. So we're just looking. I just hope that everybody will still support. And we're going to lose a game or two, maybe 4. But with the number of kids that we have, I think we're going to compete with everybody we play.
Well, so with that in mind, I mean, for the players and for you, I mean, have you guys had a meeting? You talked about what your ambitions are for this season.
We have, and the kids' goal is to win 10 games, and realistically, I mean, it could happen. When you've got Kenyon and Tyson Martin in the backfield, and you've got 6'5" Russell Williams playing the wide receiver, I mean, there's not a lot of defenses that can match up with that. Now, if we weren't as good on the line as we are, then it would be a little far-fetched. But I think our guys are going to give Cortavion, 2.5, 3 seconds. And if you can't get rid of it in 2.5, 3 seconds, then this is going to be a disaster anyway.
Yeah.
But that's, we're looking forward to a great season.
What is the thing that you've been most impressed with your players between last season and the start of this season, or even the start of practice this year?
Just the maturity, the growth on that level, not having to call around and see where they're at when it's time to lift weights. And, during the summer, we started practice at 5, and, 20 of the 26 that we had at the time was in the locker room at 3:30. They were ready to go. But that's what success does. You know, they won last year and they were able to taste it a little bit. Now they're hungry for more and they just want to do things to get better.
Well, and I think you have several guys on the team at this point who have post-high school aspirations and start playing college football and that kind of stuff. And I guess maybe that's part of what's going on too, that maturity of, I'm not a kid anymore and now I'm working toward my future.
I sit down and tell them every day, I tell Russell every day, this is it. Your scholarship started 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. We've contacted all the colleges. I've done what I'm supposed to do. Now you have to perform. Mm-hmm. So there's no room for the, immature stuff, being a prima donna. That's what I call him a lot, Madonna. He may come out one day and, he looks like Terrell Owens, and then the next day he may look like, I don't know.
Terrell Owens on other days.
Terrell Owens on other days.
In the same game sometimes.
In the same game. But he's I think Russell has it now.
Yeah.
I think it's clicked. I mean, the kid's 6'5" and weighs 185, 190 with a 7'2" wingspan. He could play receiver in college. They would work on his speed, but I would look for these colleges to probably groom him to be a tight end, maybe put 35, 40 pounds on him because he will block and he doesn't mind contact. So, then the Twins, I tell the Twins, hey, now is when these people are going to start really taking notice. Last year, who is this kid? Up at the state playoffs, the championship games, Chat Pennington let me know that after week 2, because Tyson didn't play week 1, after week 2, he started looking, on the stat lines for Tyson, and he was wanting to know who this kid was. Yeah. And we're standing in the tunnel waiting for the awards, and I just introduced him to Tyson, and he had no clue that Kenyon was his twin brother. And so Kenyon was there with him, and Kenyon walks by all of us, and he kind of looked at Tyson and looked at Kenyon. I was like, oh, yeah, Coach, I got 2 of them. And they mimic each other. Yeah. And again, Kenyon he's finally ready to step out of Tyson's shadow. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm just as good as my brother. So he's running hard. He's more of the vocal leader than Tyson is. Yeah. But Keaton Williams I've been the most impressed with his leadership. He's the one in the locker room. Hey guys, it's 10-5. We're supposed to be on the field. Let's go. Mm-hmm. When people want to take a break, he's the one that's kind of in their stuff. Hey, we're not going to win crying, or we can get water when we're done with this. And that's been big because we've not had a leader, and so he's showing that he wants to be that leader.
Well, and I guess for you as a coach, it makes it easier because now you got some people who are on the field who are kind of taking care of the business, so you can just worry about the coaching part of things.
Right. And, I was telling Tony a couple of weeks ago, he was asking me some questions, and, last year I felt like I had to do everything myself because I wanted it done a certain way, and I wanted to make sure it was done. But, it didn't take me long to delegate some of those duties to the other coaches and trust what they're doing. I hired them on the staff, so I know they're knowledgeable about the game, but that's made it a lot easier too.
Real quick before we get out of here, who are your assistant coaches this year?
We still have DJ Purcell, who is our defensive coordinator. Trey Hayes he's actually my head assistant. Ricky Harper, Trevor Nichols, we call him Big Teddy. He's helped a lot. He's helped a lot too. Dwayne Hatcher, Brian Graves, Brandon Korn, and then Tim Gower is still going to help. But we have another new guy, Bo Thorpe. Bo played over at Grayson County in the 80s. And big fullback linebacker, just rough. And he brings some law enforcement experience with him. He was over the federal holding center, the jail over there. And the kids have really responded well to him. But those are going to be the core of the guys that's going to help me get it done.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Well, I will not be there Friday. John, my son, will be there Friday, so he'll be covering your game on Friday.
That's his government name. I have to call him Augie.
Yeah, that is his government name. Yeah, I know everybody on here who listens and knows. They're like, who?
Who's John?
His son named John? Yeah. Augie will be there on Friday.
Yes.
Government
yes.
name. All right. Well, good luck to you, Trevent.
All right. Thank you for having me on.
Good luck to the Colonels this year.
All right.
This is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, now we have John Butler in the studio with us. I want to thank Trevent Hayes for joining us to talk about Caverna football. Wrapped up our 3 weeks of football coach discussions. We had John Myers on a couple of weeks ago to talk about the Barron County football team. Jeff Garman last week to talk about the Glasgow football team. And then we had Trevent Hayes today to talk about the Caverna Colonels. Three coaches who I think are all three feel pretty good about their teams this year. I mean, I know that everybody always feels good before the season starts, but we have three guys I think are pretty honest with us about their teams when they talk about them, I think, and when they might not like something, they'll mention it, but I think they all feel pretty good about what they have.
I've said 1,000 times, coaches on pre-season interviews are extremely optimistic, way over the top optimistic, or just, that they have to say something nice.
Yeah.
I mean, rarely does anybody come in and go, we're not going to be very good. But
kind of the wrong message.
That's true. But in this case, I do think all three schools have an opportunity this year to be really good.
Yes, I do too.
And so I don't think there's false optimism with Caverna, Glasgow, or Barron this year at all.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Let's start with the Barron side of things because, I mean, they are in a 4-team district.
This year.
Yeah, 1 year left of this particular district, and it'll be different next year. They finished third technically last year, but then they ended up with the 2 seed, I think because North Hardin had used an ineligible player.
Correct.
And so then they ended up hosting that first-round game, which was the first time they had hosted a game in quite a while. And so they lost that first-round game, but that's okay. That's the way that goes. But on the upside of that is they have John Myers, an experienced coach who's taken over since then. And basically, they have the key weapons that they had from last year back on offense. Also, they had lost a lot of defensive players before last season, but they returned a lot of those guys. So, I mean, it looks like they're in a really good position for what Myers wants to do with his offense, especially with Tate Spillman at quarterback. And up front, looks like they have good experience returning, John.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. This is the most optimistic I've been in a long time, to be honest with you. Just for several reasons. Number one, just the amount of players that are back. Mm-hmm. Quarterback, Tate Spillman be one of the better quarterbacks in this area. Just when your quarterback's back, especially if they can play, mm-hmm. It's a big, big asset. And plus, you have other players that have Bewley is back, and you just have so many other kids who've made impacts that are back.
Jackson Bird
had an outstanding year as well. Clemens, who's mm-hmm. going to play offense and defense. Waylon, and the sophomore, he was a freshman last year. That's moved to running back. I forgot his name. I've gone blank. Right now.
We'll have the interviews online. You can go check it out because I believe Coach Myers had mentioned it. But I'm with you. My mind is slipping on it. At the moment.
My mind is completely slipping. But with the players that are back, and also I think with you have to give Coach Muse a lot of credit too mm-hmm. for building up the middle school and the roster, and had a really, really big sophomore class. So kind of the framework has been set in a lot of ways. And then mm-hmm. you have John Myers come in, who's, an established championship coach in many ways, who has a defined offensive philosophy at the wing tee. Mm-hmm. And it seems like to me this type of running attack is an offense that may fit very, very well with Barron, with the stable of running backs that he has, with Tate Spillman under control. Mm-hmm. I think the table is set, but barring major injuries, and you can't predict that, to be mm-hmm. honest with you. But barring major injuries, and with the schedule that's set up, 6 home games for Barron, 4 road, it does look like there's a possibility that Barron could have a really, really good year. Yeah,
well, and the district is going to be the same in the sense that North Hardin's always going to be tough, Central Hardin's always going to be tough, but when Coach Muse was there, and they proved, especially Central Hardin. I mean, they caused Central Hardin problems seemingly every year they played them. And so Barron's beaten them a couple of times in that district setup. So it's a they know they can win those games in that district.
No offense to Warren Central, but they replaced Meade County. That's a more favorable matchup.
Yeah, I mean, and they've been down. I mean, for people who have been on the rock, Warren Central used to be a powerhouse, but these days, the last few years, they've struggled. So that lines up pretty well for them. I think the biggest thing, though, probably for them is the experience they have coming back on defense, because at the defensive front and at the linebackers last year, it was basically a whole new group of people. And I think that showed sometimes during the course of the season, just the inexperience, or if you had an injury and you're just relying on people who, just didn't have the experience that the prior group had. And I think that's probably a big thing for Barron, is having those guys back.
I was thinking Jordan Harris was the
Jordan Harris,
freshman running back.
He looked
sophomore.
really good in that scrimmage, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
And then, so on the Glasgow side of things, Glasgow lost, I think, 17 seniors, 20 total players, because their quarterback moved to Adair County. One of their guys he played sparingly last year. He's at Caverna now. And then Dalen Thomas, who did play quite a bit, he moved over to Barron County, I think, in January, even before Myers got the job over there, for those who asked that question. He left before Myers got the job at Barron County, for those who want to know.
Another player that will help Barron.
Yes, he will. We didn't get to see him in the scrimmage because he had a foot injury, I think it was. But they told me they think he'll be ready for the game this coming Friday against Metcalfe County. I think last year at Glasgow as a sophomore, I think he was second or third in tackles, and he's maybe been second in running in touchdowns as well, because he had run out of that wing tee. So, yeah, he'll be a big help for Barron. But on the Glasgow side of things, so they lost all those, and you kind of have to look around and say, okay, what are they going to look like? So they played Logan County in the scrimmage, and it's just a scrimmage, and I was pretty impressed because we have 5 new offensive linemen for Glasgow, and I was actually pretty impressed how they blocked up front to start with in that game. Cameron Bull at running back ran effectively. And then Hudson Gum, his first few passes looked a little bit timid, but he threw a couple of dimes in that game to Jarek Martin that were outstanding. Both of them touchdowns. One of them was the classic kind of seam route where you throw it on time, and as receivers splitting the defenders and the back defenders on the money. I mean, it was gone. And so as they settled in, I was like, okay, their demise was, probably prematurely reported. They look pretty good out here against Logan County, which has been a really good program in recent years.
Coach Garman was very, very spoke very highly of a lot of his young, skilled athletes.
Yes.
And he said their team speed is really good, and Glasgow normally has good athletes and so forth, but he was very complimentary of his backs, his receivers. The line was something that he thought would come along, the new line, but he felt like his skilled players were as good as they've been in a long time.
Well, and I tell you, another guy that stood out to me in that scrimmage was Caden Allen. He had 2 interceptions in the game. One of them was a deep pass that was going to be a touchdown, and he just cut in front of the guy and just picked it off and then returned it about 25 yards. I say that in the sense that they end up blowing it dead because they don't want people getting killed in a scrimmage or whatever. But, I mean, if it had been a regulation game, there's no telling how far, because he picked it off at the goal line. He may have hit that one for 100. So, their defense, the secondary looked pretty good. They did give up one big pass play, which has been kind of a bugaboo for Glasgow in recent years. But overall, I thought they looked pretty good. Their tackling was actually pretty fantastic, especially linebacker secondary tackling. I thought was really good. So, I was pretty impressed. I've got to say, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't see them play the Davies County scrimmage, but I'd heard from some folks that they were a little concerned about how the defense played against Davies County. But I mean, Davies County's not bad. So that's one of those things that kind of stood out to me. Was I was pretty impressed with how they played in the game.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, both teams. Glasgow opens up Friday night against, I think, LaRue.
Yeah, LaRue at Elizabethtown Sports Complex.
That's correct. LaRue's still working on their field, so they're going to be played over in E-Town. LaRue traditionally has a really, really good 2A, 3A team, basically same size. Their school is similar in a lot of ways to Glasgow. They do have their share of athletes and so forth. They have a rich tradition in sports. So that would be a good test for them. And then Barron and Metcalfe. And Metcalfe returns several players from last year as well. So, the Barron-Metcalfe County game, I think it means, it's a game that Barron probably should win. Mm-hmm. If they don't win, it's probably an uh-oh moment.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Metcalf's not good enough. They're very well coached, but I've always felt like Metcalf tends to, Coach Harbison tends to try to prepare for the late part of his schedule.
Yeah.
He has a relatively thin roster, and they just seem to me they get better as the year goes on. When the weather gets a little cooler, then they get into their district games and so forth. So, that should be I think with the excitement going around, should be a big crowd, big gate at Barron on Friday.
Yeah. The thing about Metcalf County is it's a good opener for anybody, because if you are not ready for football season, they'll get you ready in a hurry, because you're going to get hit hard by them. You're going to learn everything you need to know about whether or not you really want to play the sport when you play Metcalf County. And that's probably true for Glasgow against Monroe. And then Caverna, of course, they go to Muhlenberg County. Traditionally, not a traditionally strong program, but it is basically a large school compared to Caverna. And so, that's a pretty good test for them in terms of opening the season against a school that probably has, maybe 3 times as many players possibly as Caverna does. If Caverna's around 23, they probably have around 60 or so there.
Yeah, that's no, they're a much bigger school. They're 5A or 6A. But Caverna, let's be honest, they're not going to play Muhlenberg if Muhlenberg is, like a Trinity or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's probably a little telling that, Muhlenberg's had their major share of problems throughout the years in football.
Yeah, not traditionally a very good program, but it's last year Caverna ended up losing the game 22-6, and I think Muhlenberg scored all 22 in the first quarter, and then Caverna hung around and had a couple of opportunities to try to get all the way back in the game.
Right.
They were also missing 2 or 3 players when they played that game last year. They will not be missing anybody as of right now Friday night, and we're talking about a group that was basically a bunch of sophomores last year. So I'm pretty excited to see how they do this year. I mean, Tyson and Kenyon Martin obviously are kind of the key to everything, both sides of the ball, because there just aren't that many people made like those dudes around here or anywhere for that matter. I mean, so for Caverna to have 2 of them and then some more to go with them is a pretty high mark for them.
No, it should be the best team Caverna's had in 15 years, 20.
Yeah.
I think if you ask Trevent tell you the same thing. He's very optimistic. I mean, they have the skilled players to play. The question is, and he was very complimentary. I heard it driving back over here of his improvement of the line, and that's his offensive defensive line. I think will ultimately determine how well they do against good opponents.
Yes, that's right.
Against really good opponents, that's where it's going to have to hold up.
And he'll get some early tests, because they're going to play Adair on week 2.
They always play hard early.
Yeah, they'll play hard. I think it's week 4 or so,
yep.
and Eminence on week 3. So, I guess hard is week 5 or so. Eminence on week 3, who was really good last year. And, and then their playoff situation, the district they were matched up with last year, all 4 teams in that district were good last year. So, they'll get plenty of tests for that defensive and offensive front to see where they are. Before we get there. Anything else on the high school football before we get out of here?
No, it's looking forward to it. I mean, we've had a great break in terms of the heat and weather for football for the football scrimmages. It looks like it's going to continue the rest of the week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got again some quality teams around here. Bowling Green's preseason number 1 in 5A.
Yeah,
with the vast majority of the team back who won a state title.
Right.
Maybe their only real step in their way could be South Warren.
Yeah, what were they, 3, I think, or 4?
Yeah, but with Button, the quarterback back who signed with Eastern Michigan. Of course, Deuce Bailey is maybe one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the state as well. I'm not for sure if he's even signed yet. So you got it's here. Looking forward to it. It's always a lot of fun and so forth. And but it seems like to me the teams in this area are maybe better than they've been overall in the past.
Oh, yeah, I believe so. Before we get out of the segment, a couple of notes real quick. We're going to have a pregame show, a Brown Sports Bag before the pregame show on Friday night from 5:30 to 6:30 at Barron County High School. That'll roll into the pregame show. I think you're on there with Jay Turner this Friday for Barron County versus Metcalf County, and you can hear all that right here on 104.7 The Score. And this is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's Glasgow, and we'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
John, I don't know that we've discussed the Reds since the All-Star break. I was trying to think about this when I was putting this in the show notes. When the last time was we actually even bothered really to talk about Major League Baseball. And it's been a while. I guess maybe it was after that because we were talking about we were entering the season of the fire sale, and we were trying to decide, which teams were going to be sellers and which ones were going to be buyers at the trade deadline and that kind of jazz that usually we see every year. And looked like the Reds might be one of those sellers, but I guess they weren't, as it turned out. And then they had a pretty good little run. They won 7 of 10 games, and we were at 60-61, and everything looked like it was turning around. And then they played the Royals over the weekend and absolutely got mollywopped. They lost 3 games by a combined score of 28-3. They scored 1 run in each game, which just, was kind of a mind-boggling weekend for them.
Not really.
Okay.
No, not seriously, not really. That's the Reds.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's consistent with how they play. They swept the Cardinals Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Swept them, a division rival, and got their record within 1 of 500. And then Kansas City comes in and just, like you said, wore them out 28-3.
Yeah.
And that's why they're sitting 60-65 and just kind of in a lot of ways playing out the string, to be honest with you. They didn't make any moves, I think, mainly because of their injuries. It's almost like they're going to get a trade when they get those players back, but it looks like it's not going to be enough this year. I don't even know if they'll even come back this year. It's just one of those years where Ellie Deli Cruz has had a great year. He's going to steal close to 75, 80 bases and going to hit 25, 30 home runs, and he'll be up there with probably hits 260, 270, playing a good shortstop. He's done his part, but they have not got consistent hitting. The Hunter Green's an all-star. He may be the top 3-5 pitcher in the game right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, his ERA is tremendous, and so their pitching overall has been good, but they've not hit it at all, other than De La Cruz and Steer a little bit. But it's the Reds are. They have to eventually do something because they've got a really good payroll. They've got their best players under contract. They're still young, not quite in their prime, but good enough. Mm-hmm. But they need to take off, kind of like the Orioles took off. Yeah. And, they're just kind of spinning their wheels right now. So I don't really know what the answer is. I don't know if just patience, just kind of, maybe next year be better or whatever, or they maybe need a little of infusion, whether it's from the managerial position or maybe a key player here or there. I'm not really for sure, but I think it's fair to say overall it's been a disappointing year. Yeah.
Well, it is better to be a Reds fan than a White Sox fan at the moment. They are, 30-95, I think it is.
Yeah, they lost at one time 24 out of 25, too. They lost 21 in a row.
Yeah.
They didn't. So, yeah, it's a franchise that's worse than bad right now. They're atrocious, and even some of the moves they made at the All-Star during right before the trade deadline, where they traded some of their better players, it didn't seem like to me they got a whole lot out of them when they got the trade back. So I really don't. The owner of the White Sox owns the Bulls. It's Jerry Reinsford or whatever, and it's just it's a franchise that's. Of course, they compete with the Cubs for, they're like the Mets, Yankees, but man, they are bad.
Yeah.
I mean, they are bad.
Yeah, they are. They qualify as bad in every way.
Yeah, they're bad, and if you're gonna be bad, play your young ones and try to get better that way. And it just, it's.
They're bordering on the run of the Pirates there at this point in time with the Chicago White Sox, where it's like, okay, they just don't do anything right.
Well, they're on the verge of having one of the worst, if not the top 3 worst records of all time at the pace they're on.
Yeah. Though that's what when I looked at their, because I was just kind of scanning.
There's still 35, 40 games left.
Yeah, I mean, and they're trying to find every way possible apparently to lose them. Not the players, but just the whole situation, I guess. When I looked at that, I was like, if you're a suffering Reds fan, you could be a White Sox fan right now. So that's something to rejoice, I guess. But yeah, you're right though. The Reds. This year's disappointing. Next year, it looks like they've got to cross that threshold next year, and really challenge in that division, not just keep muddling around.
They do, because the division is not great. Though I thought Pittsburgh may make that run with that great pitcher, but they lost 10 in a row, so they've played themselves out too.
Yeah.
St. Louis have played terrible. They're under 500. There's only one team in the division above 500. That tells you how bad the division is. Milwaukee.
That's what I looked, and I was like, oh, so they're they're a game out of second place despite getting.
But second place don't get you anything.
No, it just means you finish second in that bad division.
That's correct.
All right, this is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
John, the last week that we were on this show, we said, hey, it's the beginning of soccer season coming up that day, and here we are now. We have a week of soccer season behind us. Played multiple games, all of our teams. Barron County's boys won one and lost one. The Barron County girls.
Boys beat Hart 5-1 and lost to Muhlenberg.
Yeah.
5-0.
Yeah. And then Barron County's girls, I think they won their first three. No, they lost their first one, the Bowling Green.
It was 8-0.
Yeah, and then they won the next two and then tied Nelson County on Saturday.
Yeah, they beat ACS, the district win 5-0, Muhlenberg 3-1 and tied Nelson. So they're 2-1-1.
Yeah. Your least favorite thing, a tie.
A tie. Right.
So
Glasgow girls lost their first two, 8-0. Yeah. They didn't. If you notice all these 8-0 scores, they reduced the mercy rule from 10-0 to 8-0 this year.
Yeah. Somebody had texted me and asked me about that, and I was like, I'd forgotten they had changed it, but they did.
And Glasgow boys went 1-2. They lost to Russell County 1-0. Lost to East 3-1. That was a little surprising to me. They've got a rematch, I think, this week with them.
Tomorrow. Oh, no, Thursday, I think it is.
And then they came back and beat Russell County, I think, Saturday 5-0.
Yeah, 3-0.
3-0. I'm sorry.
Well, and
we don't have any stats. I would like to tell people who scored, who did what, but there's no stats for anybody right now. So
I've got some notes from the Barron County girls and boys games, the wins, and then I do know Saturday Glasgow's boys, Jared Malagon scored 2 of the 3 goals, and one of the ones he scored must have been about 30, 35 yards out.
Mm-hmm.
And he banked it off the right side post into the back of the net, and it was on purpose.
Oh, good.
It's a heck of a shot. When he shot it, I was like, well, that's a heck of a shot. And the goalie, I knew he had no chance to get there. And then after the fact, the goalie was like, can't somebody cover that guy? And I'm like, nobody's looking for somebody to shoot a shot like that from 35 yards out. So, yeah, it was a pretty impressive goal. But, it's kind of a mixed bag to start with. I would say that the teams – well, caveat on the Glasgow's first 2 games, Coach Mahung was not there for the first 2 games. I think it was his daughter was moving into Rice, and so they were in Texas. And, sometimes when the coach is away, no matter if the assistant tells them what to do, it's like a substitute teacher in the classroom. Maybe they just don't play the way they're supposed to or as well as they should. So I'm with you that it surprised me they lost to Russell County and how they lost to Warren East. But when I saw them play Saturday, I was like, well, whatever was going on, they look a lot more like they're what I expected them to look like on Saturday. And now the Barron County boys, I think Coach Nyken is still trying to get them to understand what he wants them to do. He's kind of mixing in some younger guys and some older guys, and so they played, I thought, pretty well against Hart County. Got some pretty good setups, and their goals were all pretty good setups. Obviously did not play very well against Muhlenberg County up there. Muhlenberg's pretty good at soccer. We were talking about their football team. Their European football team is usually pretty good, though. So that's a pretty tough one. And I think the Barron County girls are, again, probably kind of still learning what it is Coach Smith wants them to do. That's her first year there as well. So, they've played pretty well, I think, overall. Bowling Green right now is just absolutely I think they're by far the best team in the region right now, even above Greenwood at this point. They're just loaded at the moment. So that result,
it's a tough one to open up with.
Yeah, that result's not necessarily surprising.
I like that they play.
Yeah.
I wouldn't prefer not to open up with them.
Right.
Later down the road a little bit.
Get a little wind under your sails.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Glasgow girls, we had Coach Zedemoyer on here. He was talking about the fact that he's still trying to rebuild this team because they were just so down in numbers. And I will say in that opening game that they had against Warren East, against the state's #1 goal scorer that Warren East has, I thought their defense played pretty well for a large stretch of the game. But, she's just so hard to deal with. She scored 5 goals in the game. I can't think of her name off the top of my head. Is it Borders? Maybe? I don't remember. Anyway, so I think she had 62 goals last year to lead the state of Kentucky. So she had 5 in the game. She's just tough to deal with. So they're still trying to kind of figure things out. Volleyball starts tonight. Barron County is hosting Metcalf.
Monroe, isn't it? Is it
Glasgow's playing Metcalf. I don't remember who Barron is playing tonight. Sorry.
I thought it was Monroe.
It could be. It probably is. You probably got it. Yeah, Glasgow's hosting Metcalf County tonight. And then tomorrow night, Barron and Caverna play each other. So that'll be, local teams playing each other tomorrow night over at Barron County. We didn't hear from the Caverna or Glasgow volleyball coaches this year, but I'm curious to see how they both look. We had Robin McMurtry in here to talk about the Barron County volleyball. She feels good, even though they lost a bunch of players from last year, a bunch of really good players from last year. She feels good about the players coming up. She always kind of keeps she keeps a number of seniors every year. I don't know how, unlike other sports, I'm not sure how she manages to accomplish that. They stick around and play volleyball. And then, we still have the high school golf season going on. We have just over a month until the regional golf tournaments start. So things have kind of slowed down. They're playing every, weekend at tournaments, not every day like they were for the first 3 weeks of the season. And Barron County's girls finished 4th this last weekend at Lakewood Golf Club, I think is what they call it. And Russell Springs, Chloe Witcher. Actually, basically what happened was they had everybody shooting in the 80s except for one for the team scores. And so they're getting closer and closer.
They are. They're getting closer to having, you got to have 4 to win a region or to qualify. Mm-hmm. You got to have 4 pretty good numbers. It'd be nice to have a couple in the 70s and the rest in the 80s, something like that.
Yeah.
But they're kind of getting closer to looking like one of those teams that can actually compete. If you got 2 good ones and 2 that shoots in the hundreds, you can't win it.
Yeah.
So
right.
you got to have that 3rd and 4th and so forth, and it's appearing to be more and more promising for them.
Yeah, and I thought, Chloe's played well all year, but I thought Tinsley Nagel, the last 2 tournaments they've had, I thought she shot really well because she was shooting in the 90s. Both her last couple of rounds have been in the 80s.
That's good, yep.
Lucy Zala's been a little high the last couple compared to what she was shooting earlier in the year.
She's proven she can score.
Yeah.
Score up.
So, and then Kinsey Edwards has proven that she can do it too. So, they really have 3 golfers in Edwards, Witcher, and Zala who can shoot even in the 70s. They've done it. And now Tinsley Nagel, if she's getting down in that mid-low 80s range, you're right. They're not far off the pace because right now South Warren is a little better than them. They've had a little more consistency. Bowling Green's had a little more consistency, but they've not been far off either one of them in the tournaments they've played with them. So, they have a real chance. I think as every golf coach who talks to us about this, there's one day that matters.
That's right.
And you're just trying to get to that one day and playing your best rounds on that day. And so that's, for them, that'll be September 24th over at Rolling Hills Country Club in that Region 3 golf tournament. And it can happen for them. They know it can. They know they're close. And then Emery Gardner, she's been getting her rounds better for Glasgow. Their team, they just have a freshman and a bunch of middle schoolers playing right now, and then Emery. So she's kind of carrying the torch for Glasgow golf at the moment. So we'll see. Hopefully she can get in there and make a cut. And then the boys Barron's boys played some matches, but they didn't play any tournaments this past weekend. I think they were playing at Franklin Country Club this coming Saturday. That'll be a good tournament for them. So we're in the middle of the golf season, but we're only a month away from the end of it. All right, it's the Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.